Hello and welcome. We're glad you could join us today for the complimentary ICMI webinar, Channel Failure, How to Avoid the Hidden Dangers of Omnichannel. Our sponsor for today is Five9. And before we get started, we have just a few quick announcements for you today. One, we will be recording today's presentation, and you'll receive an email in the coming days with instructions for viewing that recording. Two, we are planning to save some time to answer your questions at the end of the webinar, so feel free to submit them at any time directly through the Q&A platform. Any questions that we're unable to answer live today, we will be sure to answer offline or in an upcoming blog post. Now, before we go any further, I do want to encourage you to head over to the ICMI website following today's presentation. You can download a complimentary copy of a toolkit that ICMI and Five9 just released, and it's very much relevant to today's topic. It includes more than 20 pages of tools and resources you can implement in your contact center. And we've actually included the link here below your webinar console, where you'll also see more information about our speakers. And speaking of our speakers, it's my pleasure to introduce today's speakers. I'm joined by ICMI's Community Director, Justin Robbins. Justin has worked in a variety of contact center positions, ranging from agent to senior leader, and he's worked in and with both inbound and outbound centers of all sizes, and has also trained thousands of contact center professionals around the world. I'm also joined by Meyer Nodcat, who's Vice President of Product Marketing at Five9, and Meyer has more than 15 years of experience in the contact center industry and holds an MBA from Santa Clara. Now, just one final reminder before we go any further, we really encourage you to be social throughout the presentation today. We've included some hashtags and handles here for you, so please keep the conversations going, share what you learned, tweet your questions, and share your ideas. And so without further ado, I'll now turn things over to Justin.
It's Monday morning and you get the call. It's your senior executive on the line and the two of you need to talk. As it turns out, there was a strategic planning session that you were not a part of, but it was decided that your organization needs to better deliver an omnichannel customer experience. But good news, your executive says, they've put you in charge of tactically making it happen. And just saying that takes me on a flashback several years ago when I was running a contact center, and I got that call. And it was a little bit different because omnichannel's not what we called it at that time, but one of our leaders got the idea that they knew how we could keep with the times. They knew how we could deliver a great customer experience, and they knew that the contact center had to make it happen, but they didn't know what it would take to effectively make it happen. And as we prepared for today's webinar, Meyer and I were talking a lot about this challenge, and really over the past year and maybe even more than that, he and I have been having these conversations back and forth about what do these trends really need for our industry, and talking with so many contact center leaders, we're recognizing that the landscape is changing, and we probably all know that there are so many advancements happening in our organizations, and maybe you're here today because just a couple Monday mornings ago you got a similar call, or maybe you were part of that meeting, and this word omnichannel has been floating around, and you're not really sure what that needs to mean. How do you define, how do you deliver whatever that means? And right now you're stuck and you're in a place trying to figure out, what does it mean? How do I effectively deliver this? But more importantly, what is at the root of the hype? What is at the root of the trend? And that's what we want to share today. I want to share a bit from ICMI's research and what we've seen when it comes to channel adoption in today's contact center. I want to share what we see as the underlying trends of omnichannel, but importantly, we want to kind of cover four key things. And the first thing we want to talk through is what are some of the dangers of this idea of omnichannel, and what does it really mean for us to do it effectively? We want to talk about this idea of moving service beyond the voice channel, and maybe you're already there, maybe you're starting to dip your toe, or maybe you've gone all in on what this means in a world of service beyond voice. But I want to talk about what's some of the value of moving to additional channels, but more specifically looking at digital channels. We also want to talk through some of the frameworks, some of the ideas, some of the questions that you want to work through as you decide what are the channels that make most the most sense for your organization. And Erica mentioned that toolkit that we put together, and today I want to share just a little bit of a step-by-step framework that you would be able to use as you start that process of saying, okay, so now we understand what omnichannel really means, and now we understand some of the ideas behind how we make it happen effectively. And so I want to share a bit of that framework, and Meyer has been generous enough to spend part of the day with us today and share some of what he's been seeing from a technology standpoint. What does this mean, and how are some of these trends more broadly affecting the way that we as organizations are building and resourcing our contact centers? And so you're in that meeting. You had the conversation, and they said, we've got to go omnichannel. We've got to expand the customer experience. And I've interviewed probably hundreds, if not more than 1,000 contact center leaders about this idea of, you hear all this about omnichannel. Where do you start? Where do you begin? And time again, they say, well, Justin, we build everything based off of what we already know. And what we already know, and what ICMI research has shown, that 97% of us are supporting and supporting to varying degrees today is voice. It's inbound voice. And the challenge that we fall into, and some of the dangers that begin here, is that all we know is voice, and the digital landscape that has changed in many ways is significantly different from some of the things that we do to effectively support voice today. But there's also some benefits and some things that are going to be very, very similar as well. And so as we talk through this, want to share what are some of the things that, if we rewind, and for maybe your contact center, it's 30 years ago. Maybe for your contact center, it's 15 years ago. Maybe it's 5 months ago. But if we rewind to some of the considerations we made when we first implemented voice or whatever that primary channel for us is, if we go back and look at some of those considerations, we're going to find some nuggets of information, some pieces that we can use to build out our strategy. But the question that really remains is, okay, so voice is what most of us know. Voice is the thing that so many of us probably today still have a majority of our contacts are coming through voice, and we've built our experiences around it. And so when we hear omnichannel, we know it's voice plus. It's voice plus, but what is the plus? Where do we go from here? And this is really where I've seen so many organizations, the opportunity for one of two things to happen is they hear omnichannel and they hear voice plus, and they ask this question of where do they go? What's the next thing? Because the key danger here with any omnichannel approach, any omnichannel planning for an organization, is that we leave it up to almost a coin toss. And this idea of just asking voice plus and thinking it through the context of it's just about adding another channel. Omnichannel is about adding more. It sets the stage for us to have this very dangerous decision that we have to make. And the decision that we so often make is that, do we support or do we not support? And what that ends up looking like for many of us is, do we support any new channels, or do we support every new channel? And this can almost become crippling with this idea alone of this choice of having to say, well, is it just about choosing to implement every new channel that we hear about? If we hear that we've got to be providing customer service through chat and social media and email and video, and we hear all of these things, is that then that we're making our decision of saying omnichannel must inherently mean that we've got to do all of those things? And some of us make that assumption. We go in thinking that's what we have to do. And so then we make the other choice, which is choosing not to implement anything new and saying, you know what, Justin, what we've got today doesn't feel broken. It's good enough, right? It's good enough. And we're supporting voice, and we feel like we've got a pretty good grasp on voice. And you know, we added email or maybe you've got self-service and you're thinking, what we've got today is good enough. And our customers are okay with that. And if we just stay where we are, we're gonna be okay. And what I want to share and maybe make some people uncomfortable today is that neither of those are necessarily right. Omnichannel isn't about every channel that's out there today. Your organization has to support all of them. Omnichannel is not that. But I know omnichannel is also not just saying that the way things are today is good enough for the way things will need to be tomorrow, in a year from now, in 5 years from now. But so then where do we start? And this is what got me excited as a researcher. This is what got me excited as a contact center leader is trying to pull back the veil of what does this really mean then? What is omnichannel service about? But more importantly, how do we do it effectively? Because it is additive. It is, and so because so many of us support voice, it is voice plus something. But what we're going to find out is what it really is voice plus context, not just that, but voice plus the customer, the consumer, their ideal place for service. And so we asked the question. We asked the question of consumers. We went out and we said, listen, 97+% of us today support voice. Is that what you want? Because we've got to wrap our heads around, okay, so maybe it is adding a channel. Maybe it's not just about context, but adding a channel. So what's the channel? So we went out and we asked consumers, and what we found is that for the first time ever, inbound voice wasn't the preferred method for customers to contact an organization. What we found is that the majority, 53% of the people that we went out and surveyed, which 53% said that they would prefer to use online chat before calling a company on the phone. And when I saw this stat, and when I saw these answers, I started to ask the question of, what does this mean? What does this really mean for us as an organization? Because if we start to think about omnichannel and we think that it's voice plus something and it's voice plus context, how do we focus our efforts? How do we get to the right place to deliver the right level of service? And so what this started to uncover to me is I looked at the preferences on chat, and I wanted to see if there's anything else that they preferred. And I noticed social media, and maybe you're finding, not social media, self-service. I saw self-service in addition to chat was highly desired. That if they could go and self-serve, that they wanted to do that, but chat ranked above phone. And so I start to think about this, where do we begin? Where do we begin? And so maybe it's not about adding all of the channels, but maybe it's about adding the right channels based off of who our customers are, who our consumers are, what they're asking for, and what meets their need. And so from a channel standpoint, I want to make the argument and the case today that it's not about necessarily adding everything, but as we start to ask the questions and we start to move through this process of what does it mean to create an omnichannel experience, it means about adding the right channels, not just for your organization, but about adding the right channels for the consumers. And what we found is if you wanted to ask the question of what do consumers prefer, what is the desired channel, our research is showing that it was chat is the desired channel. So now I'm going to start to make the case of, okay, so if it's voice plus digital being chat or digital being self-service, and even thinking about those three, then the question starts to come in the back of the mind as well, what does omnichannel mean? Because that sounds like multi-channel, Justin. This idea of talking about is voice plus a channel, voice plus a channel. That sounds like multi-channel. So what does omnichannel really mean? Omnichannel is recognizing that because we do have these interactions happening across multiple channels, and typically for the same customer journey, we have these interactions happening across multiple channels. What omnichannel is saying is that customer journey, that customer experience today is fragmented. It's in all of these little pieces, and the agents responsible for providing service don't have context. They don't have clarity into what happens in chat or what happens in self-service or what happens in voice. And the key to figuring out omnichannel is figuring out how do we provide context across the various channels that we have. But here's the other part of this. The other part of not just unwrapping this idea of, okay, so our customers, part of omnichannel is recognizing that our customers don't just want voice. They don't just want us to be really good at voice so that when they call in, we understand what happened in those other channels. What our customers are really saying is that they want the ability to get service in those channels, and they want to have context so that when they did the thing on the website, that the agent that they speak to a day or an hour or 3 weeks later knows when, why they took that action and can help move them beyond there. But our research also shows that the business case for it doesn't end there. And really thinking about what is the value of moving to service to digital? What is the value if we start to wrestle through this idea of omnichannel for the organization? Because I know when I started doing the research and when I started to ask the questions, I'm thinking, gosh, I'm seeing a lot of value for the consumer here, but I know what it's like to run a contact center's budget. I know what it's like to be under the pressure of improving costs and efficiency, and this idea of omnichannel, it may not only just be scary because we're trying to figure out what are the channels that we go after, and why would we just want to do something to only benefit the customer, but the challenge and the question is, how can this provide value back to the organization? Because to me, this is the thing about omnichannel and even multi-channel to some degree. This is the thing that I think we can lose sight of and can be really difficult when we have the conversations with our senior leaders about how do we effectively implement a new channel? How do we make the decision to do omnichannel really well is we look at the benefit to the customer, but we don't ask the question of what's the benefit back to the organization. And so ICMI dug in a little bit deeper here to say, what are the benefits? What are the benefits of an organization embracing digital channels? And two things were very clear to us, and looking at chat and self-service specifically. The first thing that we saw with self-service is that customers love self-service. They prefer, if they can handle the interaction themselves, if they can resolve the issue, they want to do it, right? And I look at the change that happened within the financial and the banking industry several years ago, and how brick and mortar financial institutions saw this increased ability to better serve their customers through self-service, right? Remember, and maybe you don't remember, but there was a point in time where for basic balance questions or for basic payments or questions about your account, you had to either go into a branch or you had to speak to someone. And now so much of that is automated, if not in many cases, all of it is automated through an app or through self-service. And that's moved across. Many organizations have recognized that self-service, not only do customers prefer it, but in case you didn't know, paying an agent can be very expensive. And when you look at the opportunity of self-service, it's more cost-effective. It's more cost-effective for us to take those easy transactional types of interactions and move them from a live agent and move it to self-service, not only because does it become more desirable from the consumer's perspective, but from an organizational standpoint, we see significant opportunity for cost savings there as well. From a chat standpoint, one of the best, I think, benefits of looking at chat as the opportunity for the organization is, again, this opportunity for us to improve efficiency and for us to maximize our agents' performance. One of the top challenges that we hear from contact center leaders is that they want to find ways to improve agent productivity. And one of the exciting things about chat is, again, depending on the context and nature of your contact center, of the types of contacts that you get, agents are often able to use congruent sessions, meaning that instead of just handling that one customer on the phone, they may be able to handle 2 or 3 or 4 through congruent chat sessions. And so you see agents who are able to just as well serve the customer, but also able to do so more effectively. Not to mention, now that we're doing things digitally, it's a lot easier for us to get a mountain really full of data, and the question becomes, how do we effectively use that data? If we have our customers using digital channels and we're able to see what they did on our website, what they did through self-service or our app, and we're able to see the chat conversation that they had, suddenly we now are empowered with so much context. And the question so often comes up, Justin, what is the difference between multi-channel and omni-channel? What is the difference between the two? And the difference between the two is that in multi-channel, you are most often operating in siloed pieces of information. What happens on chat stays in chat. What happens on the phone stays on phone. What happens in email stays on email. And I, the agent, so often am debilitated by my ability to serve the customer effectively. In fact, just this summer, our research made national headlines because we acknowledged and found the fact that most organizations prevent their agents from providing the best customer experience because they're focused on multi-channel, which silos information and withholds an agent's ability to effectively deliver service. And so the difference between omnichannel and multi-channel is in multi-channel where you're running in these silos and these fragments of information. Omnichannel says, let's still have those places, those channels where information is brought in to our organization, but let's find a way to pull it all together and provide context so that what happens on chat is known to the agent who then serves that customer on voice, or what happens on the website is then accessible easily to that agent who's helping on chat, and it's pulling the information together. So instead of looking multiple places for multiple pieces of information, which might not even come together to pull a full story in multi-channel, what Omnichannel is saying, it's not about the number of channels that you do, it's about the channels that you choose to serve in. Are you able to pull information together with excellence? Are you able to have a clear view into what's happening across the customer journey? That is the value of omnichannel. That's the value that's provided that's different from multi-channel. It's pulling it all together. And so thinking again a little bit about this idea of what makes the most sense to implement. Our research, right, is showing that customers are preferring increasingly digital channels, which so beyond voice, our traditional channel, they're preferring chat above all. If it's agent assistant, they're preferring chat. Self-service, man, the numbers on self-service, every time I look at it, it's incredible that the way that channel grows and how consumers increasingly prefer the opportunity to self-serve if it makes sense. And so then maybe you're now at this place where you're starting to think of omnichannel. Okay, so omnichannel is going to be a bit about providing context. It's going to be serving our customers in the channels that are right for them. And so stop there, Justin. What does that mean? What does it mean? How do we figure out the right way, the framework for starting this process of moving forward with implementing a new channel? I'm going to encourage every single one of you to take a look at that toolkit, because it is this idea of how do we break things down in a logical way to help us identify not only who our customers are, but what's the type of service that we want to provide and how can we most effectively do it. So I threw some things that we call out in the toolkit here from our framework, but some of the things that you want to begin, and you want to do this inventory in your contact center. Okay, so we need to go beyond. We need to go beyond voice, or maybe we do need to look at chat, or better building out our self-service. How do we do that? So the first thing you need to look at is customer segments. And what you'll find is that for certain groups of your customers, certain things might make more sense. Maybe you've got a line of business that is really great for chat, and you've got another that would make a lot more sense on self-service. And so you've got to start there thinking about those customers. Who are they? And there's so much depth there. But then beyond that, who are those customers? But why are they coming to you? Are they coming to you because they need to troubleshoot a product or service? Are they coming to you because they have deeper questions? Are they coming to you because marketing sent them a campaign and they want to learn more? But what's happening there? Starting to think about, okay, so omnichannel is about context. So it's not just about knowing the channel, knowing who the customer is and what the type of context will be, but what is the context? And context is going to come from, what do your customers prefer? And maybe for you that does mean a survey going out to your customers and saying, for your monthly bill, how would you most prefer to receive that? Is it through a text message? Is it through an email? How would you prefer to contact us? And then save that information and make it accessible to an agent. So the next time Jane calls in and the agent working with Jane knows that Jane really prefers to receive text message updates, and being able to say, Jane, from here, we're going to go ahead and do this. Or knowing that in that video that they're on that web chat, knowing that Jane is having a problem. And I had this experience recently with a healthcare provider. Jane chats in and needs to video with a doctor, and you're able to then make that happen and have all the information on file. So starting to build, what do your customers prefer, and having that data available. And it's going to be broken down by channels. Like I said, some consumers, some of your customers you're going to see are really great for one channel and are really great for another. And maybe based off of your business, it's something completely different. Maybe going video or social media is right for you, but you don't know until you ask the questions. And you can't assume you know what your customers want, because what our research has found time and time and time again is that there's so often a disconnect between what contact center leaders think their customers want and what their customers actually want and expect. And there's a bigger framework from here that includes looking at what are the hours of operations, what are the metrics that you have in place, how do you kind of set guidelines for rolling this out in your organization, what does that look like? And probably I think the most important component of the entire case for Omnichannel is to what extent can you run analytics on your customer journeys? Because that is the one thing that I'll say here. And as someone who's run a contact center, I can candidly say to you that there are certain things that you can do in the contact center and you can do well, and you can do it without technology or with homegrown technology. But one thing that I have seen consistently when it comes to what customers expect from an omnichannel experience and what organizations actually provide is that the biggest breakdown, the biggest opportunity is not having the right tools, the right resources to pull it all together. Because the reality is that tomorrow, any single one of us could implement a new channel. And I'm willing to bet we could probably do an okay job at providing a multi-channel experience. But you've been there. You've been on the phone when you've had to repeat yourself to the agent, or you've really wondered why they haven't had the information, why they didn't have your history, why they didn't know more. And increasingly, our customers are demanding that context. And increasingly, we as organizations, if we want to remain competitive, if we want to provide differentiated service, we've got to find a way to get that context, to get those customer journey analytics and serve it up to our agent in a way that they can serve well. Because I know every single one of us that's on this webinar today want to serve well. And so I'm really excited to have Meyer here because he can talk more about what does technology do in supporting this plan? How does technology enable an omnichannel customer experience? And so, Meyer, I'm going to turn things over to you.
Thank you, Justin. That was a great amount of information. I really value sort of the context of over the years we've been talking about this. So as I start to frame out my discussion about how we at Five9 and sort of vendors in the space think about how you as contact center leaders can deliver on these challenges and become sort of the champions of your customer base inside your contact centers and inside your businesses. I've broken up my section into sort of actual sort of game plan steps, and there's 3 phases. The first part is really coming up with a game plan and thinking about sort of what are the big challenges here. So as I said, there's going to be 3 phases. I think the issue for us as we think about this very much over the last couple of years is contact centers are going through this transformation. Sometimes it's called a digital transformation. Sometimes it's called modernization. In fact, it's beyond contact centers. This is a practice that exists in many big consulting firms for enterprises as a whole. So this is something that employees, partners, and in our case, customers are also forcing the issue for. So this is a big challenge across the board. And the question is, when will you address it? Because the contact center, in my experience, I've been in the contact center space since I started working. So I've always been on the vendor side, but my experience with the contact center is it moves slow, and it moves at the pace that it wants to. And one of the things that I've noticed over the last few years, and really started when social media started, is the vendor or the contact center and the business is no longer in charge of that conversation and no longer in charge of that pace anymore. It is now the customers and the consumers that are running things. And the way that I know that it's happening is because they are kind of leapfrogging the technology conversations and communication mechanisms well beyond what contact centers are able to keep up with or even plan for at this stage. So when I think about consumer level interactions, involving something like Siri and something like a chatbot or a messaging platform that's connected to social media. So it just doesn't, even though those questions may be peer-to-peer or those communications may be peer-to-peer, those communications are now very quickly also need to evolve to enterprise-level communications and often will be frontlined by the contact center. So these are things that are happening today, and the contact center really needs to pay attention and catch up because, as I said, they are no longer in charge of pacing that conversation. And the biggest issue here is obviously, and this has been sort of an organizational challenge around this topic, is internally as enterprises consider how to invest and how much to invest. There's always been a sort of cost-centric view for contact centers. It's always been sort of a basement level investment, much more based on operational costs and efficiency. And technology often is only there to manage and report on the efficiencies. And as you start to evolve that into, well, what if we could really improve those experiences? Who owns that organization once you're talking about a group in your company that really is bringing in loyalty and extending to new customers? That really is a strategic business imperative that goes beyond just sort of answering the repeated questions that may be being asked on a daily basis. So, as I said, the first phase here there's going to be three phases here, is thinking about who your consumer is. So I've put together a few data points here, and some of this is actually Justin's data, the research he just recently did, but I've also added some color here. And so the way I like to think about it is the consumer itself has changed a lot, and you have to really visualize who your customer base is. And depending on your vertical and depending on the type of sort of contact center you are, whether you're selling or whether you're supporting or sort of a classic customer service shop, you have to really think about the consumer or the customer of your service, of your contact center. So the first point that I'd like to make is that one of the things that we are noticing that's happening, that's no surprise to anyone, is a mobile and web first mindset, and that really ties back to why digital transformation is happening. But it goes beyond that. It's sort of the idea that, of course, that there has to be channels that are recognized and work on smartphones and on tablets and on any web-enabled device. That's table stakes. The bigger point, or the larger nuanced point here, is that is now the sort of the mindset of your customer that is being established by a lot of transactional business that doesn't involve service. So it needs to be very elegant, it needs to look very pretty, it needs to work really fast, it needs to be tapped into the other parts of the smartphone or the tablet so that it's not just a button that then kicks off a call. That's not enough for a mobile and web first mindset. So it's really about engaging the consumer the way that they like to engage with when they do transactions or when they engage with their friends and family, making it so pleasant and elegant that interaction is just as elegant as they would when they'd be FaceTiming or using an app. Number two is that we recognize that there's a timeline issue. So some of the data that Justin was able to dig out for us is that 74% of customers feel like they don't get the service they need in time, and time is a big issue. And again, this mobile and web sort of web first mindset is part of it. There's a growing impatience and a growing sense of needing immediate gratification for service. So it's not just about rolling out the red carpet. It's not just about NPS scores. It is about serving a customer base that is now so impatient that if you do not get them the answer, or at least acknowledge that you're working on the answer in the channel that they prefer, whether that's giving them a text back and saying you're going to just email them the answer later, whatever it might be, they are growing very impatient, and that often means that they're going to switch to one of your competitors if they're not acknowledged quickly. The next one is about sort of making the service, 62% of customers say that their recent service experiences are inconvenient. So again, these data points are asking consumers how they feel about current service experiences. And so when we think about time, when we think about sort of it feeling inconvenient, and the last data point around over 50% of customers feel like it's just difficult. Those are sort of the key data points around what the modern consumer feels and how we think about the technology that we need to build to solve that kind of problem. So I'm going to move on and think about sort of the second phase. So now that the first phase was thinking about who your customer is, the second phase is really about what would be the ideal sort of scenario for that customer. And that's really how we think about when we design our releases at Five9. That's how we think about how we want to build out the technology that will then enable your contact centers to serve the customers this way. So a lot of folks have seen journey maps like this. This has been sort of popular in the last few years to talk about. It's a really good vehicle to talk not only in the contact center space, but beyond, about the multiple steps that a customer or a person might take in a certain process. And this is sort of a classic view of one. There's a customer here, Kate, who's trying to buy a TV, who sees an ad maybe on TV and then sees a different ad on a newspaper or a digital format, and then does her own research, goes in the store, and now is thinking about buying it and has a transactional sort of experience in a store or online, and then maybe has some need, you know, to reach out to the company in the immediate, shortly thereafter after buying the TV, and then even maybe months or years go by, and then there's another sort of reach out to the contact center, and then there's a continuation of sort of an infinity loop here of sort of the customer talking about their experiences and then continuing their relationship with that brand. So this is sort of a classic view of that type of experience. Now, Justin spoke a little bit about technology silos, and I really want to draw a finer point on that. And when he spoke specifically about why multi-channel creates sort of silos, one of the reasons that happens, especially for the contact center, is even though multi-channel is a sort of contact center term, and those channels may have you know, been implemented in a siloed fashion, there's so much more going on that is beyond the walls of the contact center that creates additional silos. So you know, contact center doesn't own the website. So if there's a mismatch between the TV ad price and a website ad price, that's someone in the marketing department that has a display ad or a price of the TV that may be wrong, and that's a different technology that's being used. There might be a system in the back end that asks the customer when they buy the TV for some information and then captures it and puts it in a CRM that may not be tracked into the contact center, but that's a separate system. That's more for historical purposes. It may be an ERP system that's using it just for, you know, sort of billing purposes. And then there's sort of this idea that there's this immediate need for some help often when you buy devices or technology, and then there's a longer term. And often when customers call in, first of all, they might not be recognized in the contact center because they don't have a record yet, even though they just bought something from this company, and that system might not have been updated in the contact center. And then when they go out and advocate or write a review, the contact center might not be aware at all. So there's all these points along these lines where this customer you know, doesn't care that these are different systems and doesn't care that they've been bought by different sort of organizations and implemented with different goals in mind. But to the customer, it feels like these are all sort of breakpoints. They're silos. They're fragmented experiences when they experience a brand. And so really, when you think about visualizing this in an ideal perspective, it's really about her in this case. We actually named her, we call her Kate in our company. Imagining Kate going through this experience where she saw an ad for a TV and is now searching a website and is now proactively chatted about in terms of not just one of those automated chat requests that notices you're on a website for 10 seconds and asks you if you need help, but asks you, hey, I noticed you're looking at this model. Is there something I can help you with? Or I noticed you've been looking at these two models. Did you want some more information about the comparison? And then when they show up at the store, you know, instead of it being sort of a very personal experience, trying to capture as much data about her in that moment, so that when she leaves, there's maybe an automated email or a text that goes out that says, hey, you know, one of the first things that people find having an issue is the remote codes, and here's the remote codes, and you already have this in a manual, but here's a handy, you know, PDF on your phone, because you know that this is one of the issues that always happens. and doing that in a predicted notion. And then in addition, if Kate does write a review about the TV in 6 months from now, a year from now, and that's going to represent sort of the brand experience that she has for the TV, but it's going to be, and I guarantee you, for those moments where the interactions between the brand and Kate have been made more pleasant, more personalized, more proactive, that's going to feed itself into a much more positive review. And that's what we're all after, is that sort of positive brand loyalty, that customer retention and customer experience. So this is kind of the visualization that we have when we think about how to make technology work in those situations. And I don't have a lot of screenshots, but I really wanted to underscore with one specific screenshot. So this is a screenshot of our latest release, the summer release, which came out a couple months ago. And what you're looking at on the screen is our agent desktop in the middle of an interaction. And what's happening here is Kate has interacted with the agent, and the agent has clicked over to the history tab so they can see a full timeline, full context view, much like Justin was talking about when he says, what's the difference between omnichannel and multi-channel? Well, it's being able to quickly see all the channels with all the context in one view, and then in a very visual format, get quick bites of information, like were those interactions happy? What were those interactions about? You can see on the screen that there was some chat interactions, there were some calls, there's actually a web journey here laid out at the bottom of the screen. So Kate can get a full picture of this customer journey, their lifetime journey, and it really provides much more context than just, hey, this is Kate and she bought a TV from us before. There's a lot more here, but the trick here is to do it in a way, from a technology standpoint, that it's done in a very visual and appealing way so your agent can quickly get what they need and serve the customer immediately. So a lot of visualization, a lot of design work that went into this to make it much more modern and intuitive. And because we're cloud-based, a lot of this is very much in sort of in the like of a Google or a LinkedIn. It's intended to be logged in and used without a lot of training and a lot of onboarding. And so finally here, as I mentioned at the bottom, you can really see us using data and analytics to really drive sort of a full view of the customer journey. So with that, I just want to kind of round out with the phase 3, which is, I've been talking a little bit about how the technology is here to help, but really the key points here are, businesses typically make these decisions whether they're to solve a specific problem or whether they're to keep up with their customer base. They're done in a way that's sort of inherently siloed because the contact center itself is siloed from the rest of the business, and sometimes not treated as that business imperative or strategic business asset. So one of the things that I like to focus on when we have this conversation is you really have to pick a technology that's able to then morph and live up to that level of conversation you want to be able to have with your management, which is you really want to drive better experience and you want a platform that will continue to grow with you. So one of the things that makes it easier is, trying a few seats in the cloud, trying a few channels here and there, but doing it in the cloud makes all of those things much easier to try because you're not doing a big rip and replace and you're not spending a lot of time in services. So companies that really sort of focus on technology that evolves is the key here. And there's a lot of data here, again, around, companies that will invest in their customer experience and ones that, the last data point here on the right, the 71% really focuses on how if you invest in the technology for the agent, really empowering that agent, that's really what drives sort of a much more improved omni-channel contact center experience. So I've mentioned a couple times that we've just put out this release. Some of the key tenets I've talked through, but I just want to round it out really quickly that it's not about the specific channels, as Justin's been saying. That's table stakes now. The digital transformation has happened and you need to kind of get on board. But as we've been trying to do much more sort of in the vein of helping you get a start on this journey is focusing your energy on what works and what the data suggests is what works. Clearly, chat is one of those things, and being mobile and web-minded is clearly where things are headed. So, but on the technology side, you know, for us, we've made it so that whether it's coming from the web or whether it's coming from the voice, you're able to connect all those points and pass that context and history along in a nice, seamless, and visual way. In addition to enabling all those digital interactions, we've also sort of created really cool technology that allows you to, as a business, be able to predict and be more personalized when you do those, when you make those moments of interaction. So imagine Kate's on the website looking at this computer, and you know that she has looked before, or you have a sense that she spent a lot of time on this website, added it to the shopping cart, but then not gone. The analytics behind the scene that we have in our latest release allows you to, you know, assign that as a chat to a agent, who is now proactively creating an interaction with Kate, so that that can be a sale, or at least a helpful interaction rather than just a non-automated chat request. So again, the power behind the scenes, using a lot of the analytics to really focus on that engagement at the right time, and not necessarily having a bunch of agents on standby, which would be not a good scalable model, but really leveraging the technology there. And then finally, allowing you to sort of really leverage the contact center, as I said many times, as a strategic business asset across the organization. One of the ways that we have done that in our latest release is create an integration to Skype for Business, so that you're really tying in, if you're a Microsoft shop, it really ties in the entire organization, so you'll be able to reach out to experts in the company. You know, contact centers can easily transfer, and that interaction continues as a sort of seamless interaction. Finally, I want to just key one point, and one of the things that we've been focused on for a few years now, and this is really speaks back to our heritage, is we're very sort of metrics driven and analytics driven, and one of the key areas that we always sort of focus on is helping the agent, not just you know, monitoring and measuring them. So giving them all the tools, making it intuitive and visual, and then giving them all the rich guidance that goes beyond just a bunch of fields on their screen. It really helps them solve the issue. That's the key to making things much more personalized and customer-centric in the experiences. So from a technologist perspective, it's very refreshing for me to be at the end of a conversation where we're talking about technology that's really geared and tailored toward those experiences, but the primary protagonist of the users of our technology is the agent, and we really cater our technology towards making those experiences better for the agent. So finally, in summary, we've talked a lot about how technology and trends kind of have shifted, but really I think the key here are, you know, being in the cloud allows us to really have these conversations with companies where we talk about business agility. So, you know, not having huge investments up front and being able to sort of evolve with the business at the need of growth or change. The other thing that also allows us to do is, because we're in cloud, we continuously improve, and our latest release is a great example of us really making the most of all the digital trends that are happening. We not only added some of the preview chat and proactive chat, we also added video and SMS and other things. So it really allows companies to adopt technology much easier, because it's part of the same cloud platform, and you're just sort of turning on things as you need them. It makes it much easier to adopt and procure. And finally, as you know, many of you are sitting out there hearing a lot about sort of where we're headed from voice to chat to using more analytics. There's a lot more coming. I mean, I'm very excited. I think we're really at a turning point for the contact center industry, as well as the CRM industry, in which we're really there's a lot more going on with artificial intelligence and machine learning, and there's a blurry line between the company themselves now owning the conversation at all, or even you know, really relying on an ecosystem of other things, so that when you ask something like an Amazon Echo, does this restaurant have wheelchair access? That could be something that is actually kicking off a chat or a call your contact center. And so the future is really, evolving very fast, and the consumer base is pushing it, and the consumer technology curve is going really fast. So we are definitely in for a lot more exciting sort of machine learning and artificial intelligence sort of experiences as part of what we do in delivering customer experience. So that was my last point. I want to thank everyone, but we do have, I think, about 9 minutes or so for questions.
Absolutely. So thank you, Meyer, and thank you, Justin. Really, really useful information today. And yes, we do want to take your questions. Before we do that, though, just a couple of really quick reminders. I've seen a couple questions coming in regarding whether or not this was recorded. And yes, we did record it, and you will receive that recording via email here in the next couple of days. Also, I want to remind you to be sure to download a free copy of that toolkit that we've mentioned a couple of times throughout the presentation. You'll see that link directly below your console. And then finally, we've also got a link to a really brief feedback survey. We would really love your thoughts on today's presentation. So if you could take a moment and fill that out following our event here in a few minutes, we would greatly appreciate it. So that being said, we'll go ahead and dive right into the Q&A. And thank you to those who've already submitted your questions. And if you think of any more as we're going along, feel free to submit those, because even if we're not able to answer your questions here live today, we'll be sure that any questions left in the queue are tackled offline. So that being said, Justin, question for you regarding some of the research that you shared, and I know Meyer shared some of those data points as well. Was this survey global?
Yeah, great question. So it was global. I will say that there are certain geographies that we saw kind of better represented than others. I'm going to guess the next part of the question is probably something along the lines of, did they vary by regions, or can we break it out? And the answer would probably be, it depends on the region. I can honestly say that, we do some of that segmenting in our kind of late stage analysis. And there were a lot of these things that were consistent. Are certain channels adopted kind of more rapidly in other regions? Certainly, but when it comes to, the broader themes that we're talking about here as far as the importance of context and being able to connect all the points of the journey, research around that and what customers expect in that regard is consistent no matter, what we're talking about, at least as far as our research saw.
Makes sense. Thank you. So next question, this is one that we hear all the time, and I know it's something that was touched on in the presentation, but I don't think it could hurt to have a little bit of a refresher, because this is always a popular question, and it is, what's the difference between multi-channel and omni-channel?
So Justin, you can kick that off, and then I'll chime in.
Yep. So, from where I look at it, so I look at it from kind of like the practitioner's perspective, or, what do we see from a broader trend standpoint? And in my mind, the differentiation from a practitioner standpoint is, are you focused on serving across a number of channels and, making sure that we're able to serve customers on a web portal as well as social media, as well as chat, video, whatever? To me, that becomes a kind of a sum game of how many and what channels are we providing. Omnichannel is, of the channels you are providing, how cohesive is the experience between them? How well do you have context and insight into what happens across every single one of them? Meyer, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, and that's exactly right. So I think we hit on the context part quite a bit, and I showed the screenshot that had the rich context that goes across all channels. That's definitely part of it. And the other things that we really focused on when we were creating this, and you have to, if you think about it this way, there's been a lot of companies in this space who just basically took the word multi-channel on their marketing materials and switched it over to omni-channel when that became sort of a buzzworthy thing. But we didn't do that. And at Five9, we sort of focused on what is the difference between omni-channel and multi-channel. And we, over the years have added more native multi-channel capabilities, but never called it omni-channel until this latest release, because we thought the context passing was a really big important thing. But we also think that, the ability to escalate between channels is part of omni-channel. So the idea that you could start a call or start with a chat and flip it to a call and then flip it to maybe a video share, and that sort of the ability for that is exactly what consumers are doing now. They're kind of just flipping back and forth between things and doing things that are based on the interaction that they want to have, that it's the most efficient. So if they're standing in the store and going, I have a hard time telling between the two, you know, it'd be really cool to be able to change from a chat, which looks just like a text, into a, well, just show me which model you're looking at, and they hold up their phone, and the agent now can actually see what you know they're talking about, and gives them, and then switches it back to a voice call or a chat. That is another big part for us, for it being omnichannel. And then the last part is another part that we talked about for quite a bit, which is really driving home that notion of a sort of customer lifetime journey view. So that's definitely part of what we've been talking about with context, but it goes beyond that. It goes well beyond sort of, you know, just in some pieces of context for each interaction. It's really, as you were saying earlier, Justin, you know, bringing it all together.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. If I can add one other thing on there, and Meyer, you mentioned that that channel transitioning. You know, one of the coolest things that I think I've seen organizations doing when they're leveraging these types of capabilities is looking at what are those most common channel transitions. You know, for example, call type A most often results, you know, is a result of somebody who was on the website and couldn't find what they needed, so they move to voice, or they try to move to chat. And then organizations are trying to leverage, how do you minimize then those channel transitions as well? Because it's not just about making sure that you're able to execute seamless transitions between channels, but that's an inconvenience to our customer every single time they have to switch a channel. So the question is, how can we also then minimize the impact of those transitions?
Yep, exactly right.
Yep, great point, Justin. Well, it looks like we're quickly coming up to the top of the hour. I'll see if we can fit in one more question. This is a timely one as we head into a new year, and many people are considering implementing new service channels in the year ahead. Justin, do you have any quick tips for implementing a new channel?
Quick tips for implementing a new channel. I think the key thing is to really be thoughtful about it. We at ICMI developed something called a customer access strategy, which is essentially what are the questions you need to ask when you go kind of end to end of creating a new channel. So to me, the biggest tip is to be thoughtful about it. I've been personally in the situation of, you know, getting a call from an executive and saying, hey, Justin, in a week we want to go live with chat. And probably the biggest mistake is, you know, assuming that that was the right channel for us, but not asking questions about hours of service, capabilities, you know, some of the framework stuff that we talked about today, and that's in the toolkit as well. To me, you just have to be thoughtful and do your homework. Don't just jump into it because we said it or because, you know, your executive is saying you need to do it.
I think that's solid advice. And unfortunately, I think we're going to have to end on that note. But again, I just want to thank you, Justin and Meyer, for your time today, and thank all of you for attending. Like I said, we will be sure to follow up with you guys via email to provide a recording link for today's presentation. And again, please do take a moment and fill out that survey that we've provided here for you below the console. I do need to mention that this presentation is copyright ICMI 2016. ICMI is responsible for its content and opinions, and our sponsor, Five9, is responsible for theirs. Once again, on behalf of ICMI and Five9, we thank you for attending today and hope you have a wonderful afternoon.